He's expired.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Griffin, I don't want to hear you apologize again. Reload that weapon. Look at me, right in my eyes. I'm proud of you. Because you came with me and you gave it a try. Get that out of your head. I'm not upset with you at all. Okay? Good job.
Got in late Friday afternoon, got to meet some great people right out of the truck before we even made it to the front door of the lodge and get our stuff inside. It was really good. A lot of welcoming, handshakes. We got our stuff settled in as far as our bunk went, and we're right into dinner. And dinner was pretty much waiting for us, so that was really good to see. And then, Saturday, it was an early morning, 4 a.m. wake up. Struggled a little to get myself up, but Griffin was awake as soon as I got up. That's the first thing I saw was Griffin walking out of the restroom. He's like, I'm ready to go. So little did I know he hadn't had a ton of sleep, but afterwards we went and got in the truck with Sean Olsberg.
Just try to calm down and don't get inside your head, okay? Alrighty.
Okay.
Where you want us?
You can get in wherever.
Okay.
Got out to the staging area with a couple of other families, and then Sean loaded us all up into a buggy and took us out to our individual stands. Kind of lined us out, let me borrow a tripod so I could get Griffin set up in a good firing position. Right out of the gate, we had a buck right before legal shooting time come over our left shoulder, walking down our left side. It was outside of our area of fire. Of course, it wasn't legal shooting time yet anyways.
Raj. Hey, so I want you to slowly adjust your body position. I see it. Look out your window on your right. Right over there. Hey. He just went behind that bush.
Then, probably about 30 minutes later, right after the deer feeder went off, we saw that same deer come up the right side. Sean saw it first, called it out, and we just got to see enough of it to realize it was a shooter and watch it walk away. After the hunt that morning, we went, kind of drove around a little bit, picked up some of the other folks from their stands. Well, you excited to go and help this other fella?
Yeah.
Let's go. You got to relish in the successes of others.
Yeah.
You know?
It's all part of it.
That is right. Got picked up, went over to the stand that was actually adjacent to ours, probably, I don't know, maybe half a mile away. Got over there, and I mean, we were 50 yards out. We could see the bellies, as they were laying down by the feeders, and it was pretty exciting to see and be able to show Griffin that, somebody else was successful out here and we have a chance.
Through, you can see where he bled because that was arterial. That was blood from the heart.
So, could you shoot here?
And you're right in the middle of those lungs. And it gives you a little more room, okay? So
Alright,
what I
so
do
make
is I
sure
look
to
for
go
that,
higher than behind the elbow.
and I mean, behind the elbow ain't bad, but I'd go a little higher. That's what I'd do. All right?
You know, I think it's important to take griffin hunting, really, because I think it's something that's being lost through generations, to be honest with you. But I think it's something that's extremely important to know about yourself and your people and where your food actually comes from. You don't just go to a store and get it off the shelf. At some point, it was an animal, and you should respect that. And I've definitely taught my kids that, be it, raising animals at the house or even getting out and doing hunting, to know that this is, not only an animal that you're harvesting, you're killing, but that you're going to use to feed yourself, your family, and your friends. Oh, I follow Hometown Heroes Outdoors on Facebook, actually. And I saw it populate, and I sit there, as a businessman, I'm sitting there kind of rummaging through my calendar trying to figure out, like, hey, I'm not out. Like, I have nothing slated for hunting season. I've been so busy. I'm like, man, this would be a great opportunity to get my son out. And I went ahead and just put it on my calendar, and I emailed all of my guys. I'm just like, hey, I'm unavailable these days. And I did that from the start, and then ended up getting selected. So I was like, oh, that worked out beautifully. But yeah, it was all through Facebook.
I think originally I was a little brought down by it because we've been trying to do like a hunting thing and kept like just not going to the range in time to do enough practice to actually go, so we kept canceling.
Yeah, I think part of it was, like Griffin was saying a second ago, we had tried a couple of times to get him and I to go out and do a hunt. It was like the last minute every time, just cancellation or this or that, or something would come up. And it was a little intimidating for me as a father trying to teach my son how to shoot, which is crazy because I was a primary marksmanship instructor for my battalion, and I taught soldiers how to shoot different weapon systems. And then, I'm sitting here with a 12-year-old kid, and I'm like, how do I do this? So that might have had something to do with some of the prior cancellations, was just an intimidation for me teaching my son. But this last 2 weeks, I really made sure that I dedicated time to him, took time off, took him to the range. And it was amazing. We'd go out there and we'd just be walking out to go look at his target and see the fact that he was on paper. And he'd be like, I love you, man. And I'm like, yeah, this is great. So I think that's why he wasn't initially excited until we were almost here, because he was like, is this really happening? And then we finally got here and he's like, all right, this is good. So is that what you were saying? Yeah.
It's already ready. We'll go quick.
She's just gonna sit here.
You good? Hold on. Okay. Look, right here. See them? Gun piles? Look out of the right window, you'll see some gun piles.
All the other families that were out there were texting via Facebook Messenger in this group. And I was seeing like, oh, hey, I see this deer. Hey, I see that deer. Oh, hey, we got a deer down. Hey, we've got a turkey down. Oh, and Griffin and I were like, well, this guy over here's got a deer down. And this morning there was a deer down at that stand. We're in between both of them. Where's our deer? We're sitting there like, okay, it'll happen. It'll happen. So that first morning, Saturday morning, we saw that I think everybody that had been successful in the field was wearing paint on their faces. And the evening prior, Friday evening, we did, some raffles and had some gifts for the kids from HHO, and Griffin had gotten some a little compact with different colors face paint from when we were out there, and we'd forgotten to do that morning. So, we decided shortly thereafter that the reason why we weren't successful was because we didn't have this paint on our face. And I put paint on his face, he put paint on my face, and then everything came together.
Kind of a weird position. Oh, hey, you got a deer. Get your ears on. Okay, cameraman, we got a deer to the right of the feeder, left of the big tree. that looks like a legal shooter. Young buck. It's a young buck. Okay, cock your weapon. Selector switch. Now calm down. Take a good breath. You can't? That's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
So he gets on his scope, he looks right through it, and I mean, he gets a good bead on that deer, and all that's left is moving that selector switch and then squeezing that trigger, and he stopped. And he was just like, I just can't do it. So I said, okay, that's all right. And I went ahead and took over. He asked me to take over for him. So I looked through his scope, and I mean, he had that scope already dialed in right on that deer. All I had to do was squeeze the trigger, close the deal for him, and it was done.
He's expired.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Griffin, I don't want to hear you apologize again. Reload that weapon. Look at me, right in my eyes. I'm proud of you. Because you came with me and you gave it a try. Get that out of your head. I'm not upset with you at all. Okay? Good job.
My big thing was just getting Griffin out of his element. You know, his element is typically like in front of a video game screen and just going at it, and he's great at it. But to see him not only get out of his element, but then be in what would typically, for me anyways, for a kid his age, be an uncomfortable element, right? You're out there, you're soaking wet, it's getting chilly out, you've got, you know, blood on you from these deer, and now we're field dressing it. He's out here holding on to the deer, helping me so that I can get the field dressing done. And to see him just love every minute of it was amazing.
I was just really excited that we got the deer and that we got to just like spend that time together, and that he accepted the fact that I didn't want to shoot it yet and that I wasn't ready.
Yeah, I think the advice that I would offer up, and something that I recognize a lot in, say, military veterans is, you know, we come from an environment where everything's dictated to you. You're told, and this is what you will do. And if you don't do it, you will suffer consequences, right? That's not the same way you should parent by any means. You should be adaptable, but the biggest thing is listen. But then at the end of the day, when you're introducing them to something new, don't intimidate the hell out of them, you know? Actually listen, and they'll tell you what they can and can't do. And then you just help them knock down those barriers little by little, and their confidence will go up with that. Military time, you go through that, and you quite literally, depending on the guy next to you, even when you're, you know, something as minute as using the restroom to have your back, just being out of those hostile environments. And then I lost a couple of friends when I was in the military, combat related issues, and then also you know, suicide after coming home. So you get a unfortunate familiarity with loss, and then it didn't stop going out law enforcement. You know, had a couple of friends through my 8-year tenure who took their lives for various reasons while I was in law enforcement. Just something that I guess definitely is prevalent within that profession. And then my first partner, while I was on the police department, was actually killed in the line of duty. He was murdered during a foot pursuit, and ended up being executed with his own firearm. So that was definitely tough for me, dealing with that loss. but you become uncomfortably familiar with loss. It definitely wears on you. And then you bring out.
I'm going to slide that blade down in here. You see how my finger fits in there? And you're going to cut all the way down to here. You want to split all the way to there. All right?
You know, if you don't find a good outlet for it, you know, me particularly as a young person, I definitely had trouble, I guess, finding intelligent ways to get rid of those feelings and, or at least, you know, manage my emotions. So the events with HHO coming out here this weekend are extremely important because I know I'm not the only one that finds this therapeutic. Getting out of your element. You know, I work in an office 5 days out of the week, and you add the camaraderie, you add the, you know, family, and it only gets better. So that's why I find this very important. Sunday morning was amazing because we both got sleep. That was the big game changer, to be honest with you.
I was a lot more energetic and into it that day.
It's cooler out, it's overcast, the deer have been bedded down because of the cold and more particularly because of the rain, and I thought there'd be a lot of activity. So we got in our stand, got ourselves set up, had a little bit of wet from the day prior. It was cooler out, so I brought a bedroll with me so that he could curl up and kind of just huddle. I had my jet boil, cranked that thing up, got us some heat. And anyways, that sun started coming up, and I'd say, 10 minutes after sun up, we had some deer come in.
Had 4 doe just
Yeah, there were 4 does and a little button buck, I think.
walking around near the feeder.
Yeah. So those deer came in, and right prior to that, I had a talk with Griffin, actually, and I asked him what the biggest kind of, I guess, determining factor for him was with why he didn't take a shot the evening prior. And finally got to the root of things, because up until then, I thought it was just, say, like intimidation from the recoil, and I was trying to help him through that. But he said he just wasn't ready to take an animal's life, and I shared with him a story of the first time I shot a squirrel, which was the first animal I ever shot, and I remember feeling that way, but also, eventually getting my mind wrapped around the fact that I was eating this animal, and there was good in it. But long story short, Griffin said, "Hey, I'm not ready to take the shot, Dad." I said, "Okay, I can respect that." And he asked me to do it, so picked out one of those doe and ended up taking the shot, and ended up dropping that one. And then we ended up with a couple more coming back in. Not 10 minutes later, ended up successfully harvesting another one. And then Griffin actually saw the third one that came in that morning.
So we waited, and sure enough, it walked up really close. I don't know exactly how close, but once it got broadside, he went for it and took it down.
We got a notice that we were fixing to get picked up, so we hopped out of the blind, headed out to go and find the one doe that we had shot. Well, that I had shot that went out of our view, and I had a real good idea of where she was. So ended up beelining it right to her carcass where she was, and it was a definite heart shot. That was a good opportunity for me to show Griffin kind of what happens as far as when you get an arterial bleed with that blood in the heart pumping. So we went back to where that point of impact had occurred, and we were able to trace that blood trail all the way back around where she had run.
And then she let it all out. All of it.
we were able to look at where her footfall had hit, how she started dragging her feet, and then to the point where she actually fell over and where we found her. So it was a perfect motion of where you could see where her heart had beat, and you would have actual blood. You know, for me, I'm just proud of Griffin getting outside of his element. You know, not only was I able to learn about him and where his comfort zone is, and if he enjoys it, like he's unstoppable. He'll do anything. And that was probably the most fun for me, just to see him actually doing that. You know, we came out here this weekend, and even his expectation was, even if he had harvested something, he was like, I'm not field dressing an animal. I'm going to get sick. And then he went right into, he didn't know what he was capable of. So we learned a lot about him and his capabilities. That was honestly my favorite part this weekend. We pulled up and I was like, oh man, this is amazing. You know, hot food was waiting. I wanted to make sure we ate before we got dirty. And, you know, like Griffin said, we had the deer from the day prior already quartered out, sitting in a cooler. We just had to wash that up, get that over to kind of stations that were set up for processing the deer. You had somebody who was cutting up, you know, getting your cuts done. And then you had somebody grounding, you know, getting all the grind done. So it looked like a pretty well-oiled operation. And then we still had 3 doe laying in the back of the pickup that we hadn't even started on. So everybody came together. It was that camaraderie. We had Griffin and I started on a doe. Somebody else started on a doe. Then we had another guy start on a doe. We got all 3 of those going. We actually finished ours and grabbed another gentleman's buck. We hooked that up. Yeah, he was doing our doe. We did his buck, and it worked out pretty darn good.
I was a little surprised because, like, people would actually want to spend time with you, and you don't even know their name at that point, and they want to spend time with you. And it was just a little weird for me because I haven't really experienced something like that before. Made me feel included.
I made sure I was talking to people and I was interacting with others, and it was reciprocated. And then the teamwork, you know, it was as if that military teamwork mentality had come right back out of everybody, because it went from, I don't even know who you are, to let me help you with this deer, let me help you with that, let me help you with this. And, you know, hey, you know, checking each other's rifles, things like that. The camaraderie was amazing. I learned a lot about my son. Yeah, that's what I learned. I mean, I learned how much more resilient and adaptable he is than I originally thought he was. That was pretty cool, you know, especially even getting into not just Saturday evening of him getting his hands dirty, and, you know, he had this new knife and he wanted to use it, and he was just like, I'm gonna get in here, darn near like elbowing people out of the way so that he could start getting in there and skinning and quartering out deer. But even the following morning when we had success, he was like, hey, I'm doing this. And he just walked up with a knife and got to work. Just seeing that, and then the lack of sleep in combination with learning some new tasks or skills, it was pretty darn cool. I really didn't seek out any kind of mental health assistance or help until I had kids, which is another reason why this is so important. You know, I had my children, and that's when I said, okay, well, you know, if I'm not going to do it for me, I'll do it for my kids. And I went out, and, you know, they're still, I don't know now after being out for, you know, 15 years close, but definitely negative stigma associated with getting help for things like that, be it in law enforcement or be it in military. In fact, it was not until I got out of both of those until I actually went and got help, and then started being really honest with my care providers. You know, you go through law enforcement, you become concerned about what that's going to do to your livelihood if you tell a psychiatrist, that you're having some issues. Are you going to lose your badge and your gun? Are you going to end up, put on a desk instead of being able to go out and run the street, be proactive like you like to be? Or, what's going to happen to you personally? And you learn to just suck it up, which isn't always the right thing, because at the end of the day, somebody's going to pay for it, whether it's you or somebody around you. I didn't want my kids to kind of suffer for my irresponsibility of not going and getting the appropriate help when the resources were there. So, one of the, I guess, big things as far as being able to come out and get to know my son and get to interact with others on a positive level is just, the hard stuff that you go through affiliated with or associated with the different career paths that I've chosen and I've taken. I think a lot of that came down to me just really seeking out this camaraderie, which I've experienced here over the weekend.